Hey everyone, welcome back to MangaMinute. I'm thrilled to share my latest recap video with you. If you missed the previous one, no worries, just take a quick peek in the description below for the link. Now, let's dive right in and enjoy.
2 months had passed since Lee Cheol-soo exacted his long-awaited revenge on Wang Sam, the man who had robbed him of his dignity and condemned him to a life of torment. Now, he found himself climbing the treacherous slopes of Joint Mountain, deep in Gamsuk province. The biting wind howled around him, carrying with it flurries of snow that stung his face and obscured the rugged path ahead. With his heavy luggage strapped to his back, Lee Cheol-soo trudged up the steep, snow-covered path of Joint Mountain. Each step was a battle against the biting cold, the wind cutting through his clothes and numbing his fingers. His breath came out in visible puffs as he muttered complaints to himself. The freezing temperature gnawed at his bones, and his legs felt like they could give out at any moment. But even as his body ached with the strain, his resolve never wavered. The thought of the pleasures that awaited him spurred him on. For Lee Cheol-soo, this pain was insignificant compared to the promise of what was to come. In his mind, he envisioned a future overflowing with indulgence. Not the fleeting satisfaction of physical pleasure found in brothels, but something far deeper, something that resonated with his very soul. The pleasures he sought were not just of the flesh but of shared emotions. True love with beautiful women, bound by mutual attraction and desire. As he ascended, his cheeks flushed, not from the cold, but from the fantasies playing out in his mind. He imagined the perfect life, where affection was pure, and the pleasures of both body and mind were balanced, where he and his lovers would share an intimate bond that transcended mere physicality. For such an ideal life, wealth and fame were essential. And to achieve those, Lee Cheol-soo needed to become a hero, a revered figure in the martial world. He had once been prepared for reincarnation, gathering treasures and martial arts manuals to ensure his future. But now, having regressed instead, those preparations were irrelevant. A pang of regret tugged at him, though it was quickly brushed aside. His situation might not be perfect, but it was far from disastrous. With his knowledge of the future and mastery of martial arts, he could reshape his destiny. He smirked to himself, confident in the knowledge of what the next 50 years would bring. The world was ripe for the taking. All he needed to do was hone his skills and use his foresight to manipulate the martial world to his advantage. Becoming a respected hero was no longer a distant dream, it was a certainty. But then, a sudden realization struck him. He had smirked the same way he used to when he was a eunuch, a habit that had followed him even into this life. His expression darkened for a moment. No, that was something he had to change. He wasn't a eunuch anymore, and he wasn't about to let old habits tether him to the past. Lee Cheol-soo straightened up, adjusting his demeanor, and continued his climb toward his new life, where power, wealth, and true love awaited him. Soon, his life of indulgence and conquest would begin. Lee Cheol-soo, the man who had once been a eunuch in the imperial palace, was now on the verge of realizing his greatest dream. And the Guangdong sect would be the stage where his rise as the self-proclaimed harem king would begin. Standing before the shattered remnants of the Guangdong sect's gate, Lee Cheol-soo's voice echoed through the winter air, cutting through the cold silence. His call reverberated, bouncing off the ancient walls of the secluded sect. The snowy peaks of Joint Mountain loomed behind him as if watching the bold youth declare his intent. Inside one of the modest houses of the sect, John Young sat in quiet contemplation until the sudden shout broke his reverie. The sound startled him. Such a young voice, full of vigor and desperation. The old martial artist stood up from his seat, disbelief etched across his weathered face. A child? Here, in the dead of winter, scaling the treacherous mountain alone? The very thought seemed impossible. He hurried to his window, curiosity mixing with concern as he peered outside. Beyond the frost-covered panes, John Young spotted the lone figure standing at the broken gate, calling out once again. Lee Cheol-soo's determination was clear, his voice unwavering despite the cold that bit at his lips. His words carried the weight of a lifetime of loss and the desire for strength. An orphan who had lost his parents to bandits, driven by a singular dream, to become stronger. He wasn't just asking for acceptance. He was pleading for a chance to forge a new future within the Guangdong sect. The Guangdong sect, centered around Taoist teachings, was a unique martial faction that harmoniously integrated the three pillars of traditional Chinese philosophy: Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. This synthesis of ideologies informed their martial arts, creating a formidable and versatile approach to combat that emphasized resilience and adaptability. Within the sect, practitioners honed their skills not just for personal gain but as a solemn duty to confront the nefarious forces lurking within the Jianghu, a realm filled with both noble warriors and wicked factions. The martial arts cultivated here were practical and uncompromising, designed to stand firm against danger, a testament to the sect's commitment to justice and righteousness. To the untrained eye, the Guangdong sect might appear as a demonic sect or even a bandit group, its members embodying an intimidating presence and exuding an air of toughness that could easily mislead outsiders. Describing the sect as second to none in terms of tenacity would indeed be an understatement. Its martial artists were known for their unyielding spirit and relentless pursuit of excellence. Their dedication to upholding virtue amidst chaos carved a distinct identity within the martial world, positioning the Guangdong sect as a beacon of strength and resilience in turbulent times. John Young arrived at the broken gate, his stern gaze falling upon the figure of Lee Cheol-soo, standing resolutely despite the freezing winds that swept across the mountain. The boy's determination was evident, having braved the deadly ascent of Joint Mountain alone during the unforgiving winter. John Young's voice cut through the air, filled with both surprise and reprimand. The challenge was clear. Climbing the mountain was no small feat, especially in these conditions, and it showed a disregard for one's own life. Yet, Lee Cheol-soo, unwavering in his resolve, countered with a statement as bold as his actions. If he could enter the Guangdong sect, then nothing else mattered. Intrigued by the boy's spirit, John Young asked to see his arms and hands. Lee Cheol-soo complied without hesitation, lifting them for the elder's scrutiny. As John Young examined the boy's hands, his trained eye noticed something remarkable. The impurities within the boy's body were being expelled, a sign that the natural energy was circulating well. His mind raced. This was no ordinary child. John Young realized that Lee Cheol-soo had used the grounding technique, an advanced method of stabilizing energy and strengthening the dantian. A flash of surprise crossed John Young's face as he addressed the boy. The grounding technique was a foundational martial skill, designed to enhance one's core abilities. For someone so young to have learned and applied it to climb such a treacherous path, it was clear he possessed both talent and discipline. The elder inquired about the boy's martial background, suspecting that his parents had trained him. Lee Cheol-soo, his mind racing, affirmed the assumption. In truth, he had mastered the technique not for martial prowess but for stamina, knowing its long-term benefits. Yet, it was enough to convince John Young, who saw great potential in the boy standing before him. The leader of the Guangdong sect introduced himself, impressed by the young aspirant's display. Normally, there were formalities and processes to initiate new disciples, but in Lee Cheol-soo's case, those traditions were set aside. Talent like his was rare. With a simple command, John Young turned and beckoned the boy to follow, leading him through the gates of the sect, where his future as a martial artist would truly begin. As Lee Cheol-soo walked through the gates of the Guangdong sect, a sense of satisfaction washed over him. Everything was unfolding according to plan. He knew the sect was teetering on the brink of collapse, weakened after its once great standing among the 9 great sects was shattered by the dark martial arts war 50 years ago. With their desperate need for new disciples, there was little chance they'd refuse him. But even in this moment of triumph, he reminded himself not to grow complacent. He would maintain his focus, even resorting to discreet exercises to keep his body sharp, thinking of every detail as he followed John Young into the depths of the dilapidated grounds. As they moved through the crumbling remains of what had once been a powerful sect, Lee Cheol-soo couldn't help but feel the weight of history in the shattered walls and broken buildings. He had expected decay, but seeing the ruin firsthand made the extent of the destruction more real. The grandeur that once belonged to the sect was now only a shadow, and the desolation amplified his sense of opportunity. The fallen state of the sect meant fewer obstacles in his rise to power, and that suited him perfectly. John Young's voice broke the silence as he began to explain the rules of the sect, but first, he introduced someone, an elder disciple, the main student of the Guangdong sect. Lee Cheol-soo's thoughts raced as he calculated his next moves. The more chaotic the sect, the easier it would be for him to rise unnoticed. He envisioned himself claiming the title that belonged to Sword Saint Eugene Y, using the disarray of the sect to mask his ambitions until the right moment. A grim smile crept across his face as his mind crafted the future. The disrepair of the sect and the weakened state of its members would be to his advantage, and he saw the perfect opportunity to make a full takeover, starting from this low point and rising to claim the power he longed for. Standing in front of the worn-out building, John Young called out with authority, introducing Lee Cheol-soo to his fellow disciple. Yet, the silence that followed was broken only by the sharp gust of a sudden wind. A cold gust swirled toward Lee Cheol-soo, forcing him to shield his face from the chill. His breath hitched as the wind seemed to bring with it a figure, a young man who appeared with the same icy air that whipped across the courtyard. As the storm abated, Lee Cheol-soo caught a glimpse of the newcomer's face, and his heart sank. The man before him, Eugene Y, was not just handsome but strikingly so. Shocked, Lee Cheol-soo's thoughts raced. How could this be the same person he had once dismissed in his past life? In the stories, Eugene Y had been little more than a figure shrouded beneath a conical hat, his portrait doing no justice to his appearance. The rumors of women in the martial world fighting over him seemed absurd back then, but now, standing face to face with the man, Lee Cheol-soo realized the truth. His unease grew. If Eugene Y's presence in the sect was already this powerful, both in appearance and character, how could Lee Cheol-soo's carefully laid plans possibly succeed? His thoughts spiraled further. If this continues, my future. Anxiety gnawed at him, worrying how he could possibly compete with someone like Eugene Y, who not only looked flawless but carried himself with a warmth that unnerved him even more. Still, Eugene Y's voice broke through his internal turmoil. His tone was kind, concerned even, asking if Lee Cheol-soo was unwell. There was no trace of arrogance or coldness in his demeanor, only a gentle sincerity that made the situation worse. Lee Cheol-soo forced a stern response, trying to regain composure, but the more he interacted with Eugene Y, the deeper his worries became. Not only was this man handsome and charismatic, but he was also genuinely kind. Lee Cheol-soo's mind whirled. Why does he have to be so perfect? He silently cursed the fates. Please, show me something wrong. Anything. Eugene Y reached out with a warm smile, clasping Lee Cheol-soo's hand, eager to introduce his new junior to the sect. His enthusiasm radiated through the gesture, pulling Lee Cheol-soo along with a sense of brotherly camaraderie. But for Lee Cheol-soo, this was far from the connection he desired. The touch felt foreign, unwanted, especially coming from another man when his long-held fantasies revolved around the affections of women. His heart sank with disappointment, and a silent plea echoed within him. Please stop. This isn't the kind of contact I want. Pulling his hand free with an abrupt movement, Lee Cheol-soo stepped back, his expression tense. The shock in Eugene Y's eyes was immediate, as though he hadn't expected such a reaction. The older disciple, visibly startled, quickly apologized, his earlier excitement now tinged with concern. For Eugene Y, having a fellow disciple was a new experience, and perhaps he had let his enthusiasm get the better of him. Lee Cheol-soo, realizing the abruptness of his own actions, felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He lowered his head in a deep bow, attempting to mask his discomfort with humility. He knew he had overreacted, but his mind raced with the importance of maintaining good relations within the sect. His ambitions still loomed large, and severing ties with Eugene Y now, no matter how awkward the interaction, would jeopardize everything. Stay calm, Lee Cheol-soo, he reminded himself. I can't afford to ruin this relationship. The future depends on this connection. With that realization, he straightened and offered another sincere apology, his tone more composed this time. He knew the path ahead required patience, and no matter how much he disliked the situation, keeping his ambitions alive meant maintaining a civil relationship with his senior brother disciple. His future at the Guangdong sect was dependent on keeping this relationship intact, and every move from now on had to be calculated with that in mind. He would have to endure whatever came his way, no matter how unsettling, for the sake of the larger goal that awaited him. From his quiet quarters, John Young stood by the window, watching as snowflakes danced down from the heavens, blanketing the world outside in a sea of white. The cold wind howled, but his thoughts were elsewhere, heavy with the weight of the future. He could feel it, something stirring in the air, as though the long winter that had gripped the Guangdong sect was finally starting to break. His gaze remained fixed on the horizon, a faint glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes. He silently wished for Lee Cheol-soo and Jinwei to forge a bond soon. That connection would be vital to the future he envisioned. As John Young's mind drifted, memories of the past began to surface. It had been 10 years since he had found Jinwei, a young orphan with no one to protect her from the cruel world. Even then, he had recognized the raw potential she possessed, an unparalleled genius in martial arts. From that moment, he had dedicated himself to nurturing her, guiding her every step of the way, all while keeping her true identity a secret from the world. Jinwei was his hope, the last chance for rebuilding the Guangdong sect from the ruins it had become. But that hope came with a burden. Jinwei's brilliance could only remain hidden for so long. John Young knew the day was approaching when she would have to step into the martial world, to confront not only the challenges of power and politics, but the ever-present danger of revealing her true identity. She had lived her life disguised as a man, a necessary lie to protect her, yet it was a fragile one. A single mistake could unravel everything. He sighed, concern deepening the lines on his face. The arrival of Cheol-soo offered both an opportunity and a risk. The young man, with his ambition and intelligence, could be a powerful ally to Jinwei, helping her navigate the dangerous waters ahead. But through their interactions, she would have to learn caution, to guard her secret fiercely and never let her disguise falter. John Young could only hope that Jinwei was ready for the trials that awaited her, and that Cheol-soo's presence would sharpen her instincts, rather than expose her vulnerabilities.